ahead.
Be seated. When I was a boy, at Christmas time and birthdays, I'd get toys. And I'd play with them for a while, and then I'd start taking them apart to see how they worked. I had more fun taking them apart and maybe putting them back together even differently to see what happened, see how they worked. It seemed to be something innate in me to try to figure out how things worked. When I was about 3 or 4, I was already listening to music, and I kind of wanted to know what that was about, so I started picking out tunes and things on the piano that I heard, trying to figure out how that worked. And I studied music for a long time and thought that was what I was going to be, but, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But I studied theory and composition and all that, and it was fun, and I learned a lot more about music. But in those times of, like I went to summer camp, music camps up in Tanglewood, and started experiencing spiritual stuff, although it started way earlier, and I began to wonder how that works and what that's about. And then I became a priest and studied theology and all that. But in working with people, I started doing counseling, and I began to wonder how I work, how you work, how life works. So I became a therapist, psychotherapist. This innate sense of having to figure out how it works seems to be what motivates me. And so I think a lot. Not always correctly, but even that tells me something. And I want to talk about that in light of the lessons today. In the Gospel of John, in the prologue, the author begins, "In the beginning was the Word." Now, I used to remember the Greek, but it doesn't matter. But I know that the Greek word for word is logos. Wisdom. Intelligence. And Philo, who was a philosopher around the time of Jesus, who was born in about 30 BCE and died in about 20 AD, wrote about logos. In fact, that's where the author of John got it. From this understanding of wisdom is somehow motivating life. And Robert Wright, in his wonderful book, The Evolution of God, talks about Philo and quotes him and points out the idea that there is visibly something that moves history in a direction. Scientists who are strictly materialist scientists can see that there is movement, and then can even conceive that there is wisdom guiding it. But Philo and Robert Wright and others take it a step further. Bernard Heisch, who's an astrophysicist, I think, at Berkeley, wrote 2 books, one called The God Theory and one called Purpose-Guided Universe, as a antidote to what's his name down the hill there. And he talks very much about how, if you look at both the whole evolution of the universe from 15-point-some billion years ago, the Big Bang, or sociologists look at the evolution of human awareness and interrelations and social, cultural connections, there's a directionality. It's not just happenstance. There's visibly evidence of wisdom guiding it. And that's what I believe. In fact, that's completely what I believe. There's something guiding all of this. And God, for me, is a good shorthand word for describing that. And so what John is saying, or the author of the prologue, is saying that there is this wisdom that is guiding everything, and it becomes human and life. Now, the Creed says, "and was made man." I like it better, "and became man," or human. Bernard Heisch points out that, from the Big Bang, you all know the Big Bang, not the theory on television, which is very fun, but that from something we can't even understand, exploded. But when it exploded, it created the light gases. Well, nothing would have happened if that's all there had been. Then there was a supernova, huge explosion that fused some of those light gases until they have very elements, and evolution was on its way. Somehow that continued, the elements combined into chemicals and all that, and as somebody else said, a bag of chemicals twitched and learned how to duplicate itself, and life began. We still don't know how, but again, there's evidence that there was an intentionality in that happening. And then life evolved through single-celled animals, plants, and then it became more and more conscious, more and more self-aware. And we are, though don't get too big-headed about it, we are at the pretty much forefront of that evolutionary process. We've got a big cerebral cortex up here, which a lot of other animals don't have. They still, most of them have the reptile brain back here, which is the major difference. I point out, we don't say animals and us. We are animals. We're just more evolved. And we're evolved in order to become conscious so that we can partake in the process of evolution. And this is all inspired by wisdom, God. And so we have people like Jesus, but in addition, Muhammad, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and a whole lot of others. I could go on, waste the whole time doing that. But a lot of people that catch on to something bigger and start living from it and then move it along. Jesus came into the world as a real human being, just like you and me. But somehow he got a bigger sense of it. He looked around and said, this isn't right. All this separation, you're unclean, you can't be here, you're doing it. He said, no, God loves everybody. And not just within Israel. He said, love your enemy. To be kind to those who persecute you. Pray for them. Well, that was Paul too. But Jesus had a bigger vision that actually a lot of people couldn't quite grasp. But it got started. And started to grow. And other people sort of said, whoa, that's a new way of thinking. And to jump way forward, best example in our time now is Nelson Mandela. The reptile brain result of being in prison for how many, 27 years, would be to come out either being really depressed or really angry. Instead he comes out and said, let's do something about this. Let's make a difference. And a whole lot of people went, whoa, that's different. And they started following that. That's the way the evolution of consciousness works. Now, the key about the whole thing is that Jesus wasn't just Word becoming flesh. You are Word becoming flesh. You are that wisdom coming into a world being alive and conscious, because the intention of all of this is for you to have impact on the way things move forward. But all of us are at various levels of conscious development. One of the easiest things to look at in the world here is the tribal mind. Now, I was very saddened, actually, to hear that after all the effort to make South Sudan a separate democratic country, the tribes start fighting each other. But that's the level of evolution to which they've gotten. They've gotten there. I'm not saying, look at them, they're down there. No, but that's the way it works. That until you go past the tribal to another level of consciousness, that's what's going to come up. And all the wars in the world are about greed, which comes from hunter-gatherer mode of development, or power, territory, all those things. But human beings are intended by this wisdom to move beyond that, to go, wait a minute, this doesn't work. In that brilliant statement of Gandhi, if iPhone and I went around, I said it's better than that. He said, we'd all be blind. We went, okay, that's not going to work, is it? A little bit movement of consciousness. So we have this process that we are part of. And we celebrate in our tradition Jesus, who, as we said, have had this vision of something larger, of a way to bring a community together and create a kingdom that was more God-conscious, more aware of being connected. It's interesting, if you look at the Isaiah lesson, it's saying how God's going to bless you and make you, fill you with glory and all that. So the other kings will look at us and go, hey, yes, which is still egocentric. Still, they're going to come to us. The wise men, the story of bringing gold and all that, that was Isaiah's vision. All the gold from everybody else's countries would come to me, or us. Still tribal, just we're on top. But we've moved beyond that. Look at Congress. But step back, because Congress is really us. We're the ones that put them there. So you see it all over the place in our own country, let alone the world, older levels of consciousness that are still operating. Our responsibility is to go and move that beyond. To speak out like Jesus did, but also act like Jesus did in a way that demonstrates a different level of consciousness. So that other people go, oh, I never thought of that. And then try something new. To me, that's what it's all about. It's about living a life conscious of the fact that God, wisdom, is up to something in you to move you further along so that you further along really the whole universe. In your own little way. But that little way is important. Even here, we're starting to move beyond tribal, St. Peter's, Trinity. We've got our way. Oh, you've got your way. We're starting to figure out how to put that together because we know that will work better. We know that the consciousness it brought us here together in order for us to take the best of both and put them together and move forward. To make something really amazing. Parenthetically, I really feel now like Moses. The promised land, bye. But I can see that there was an intentionality in all of that. And that's how I live. And I'm not saying it to say, that's how I live, but saying, I want you to think that way too. Someone in the 9 o'clock said something about imitating me. Don't. Find how it's working in you. Find how your life is living and how it's already, I'm sure, manifested in you. Honor it and open yourself to let it happen more. I believe that everything that happens to us, I don't think God makes it happen. That's, I said before I like to try to figure out things. I will never figure out how this works. I just know it does. And I know that in my life, and I say this because it's in your life too, there are little things that happen that later on you go, well, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't happen in a while. I've all told you this, just briefly. 26 years ago, my sister happened to be in Haiti when the child happened to be born, not happened, And now I'm going to Haiti for the rest of my life. Not a coincidence. And the thing that empowers me isn't, oh, wow, I'm going to Haiti. It's a sense that there was a reason in that. Something nudged that forward. And I've had enough experiences of that to say, follow, go with it, see what happens. I also have enough experience to know that I have no idea where it's going to go. Back to, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. That was our mantra of the whole journey. We had no idea what it was going to end up like. We thought we knew, but it came out much different and much better. And your life works that way. Because the truth is, Jesus is not the incarnate Word. Conscious life is the incarnate Word. You're the incarnate Word. Each one of you embodies wisdom. So you tune into it, you honor it, and you allow it to grow so that your life is transformed by it. And you become part of that process of evolutionary growth. That's what it's all about. We don't honor Jesus. I don't honor Jesus because he's the Son of God, and if I believe in him, I'm going to go to heaven. Heaven is not the end of the consciousness of the planet. Rather, a society that works, the kingdom of God, is the evolutionary direction. And Jesus saw that, lived it, expressed it, It had to do with compassion, it had to do with love, it had to do with caring for each other. It had to do with saying, you're not outside, you also belong at the table. Just popped in my head once again. Look at the evolution of awareness of gay rights. What a transformation that's happened in the last 20 years. Consciousness evolves. People say, wait a minute, that's real love there. And they started changing, and all over the nation, and all over the world, people are going, oh, yeah. And then we start passing legislation that supports it. Not a coincidence. That's the same wisdom that started the whole thing 15 billion years ago. And you're on that journey.